What's going on, everybody? Doc Sloth back yet again. A little bit of more Halo Wars 2 action. Super excited. This is something me and Sloth have wanted to do here for a little while. Now that we've played some Blitz, we've got most of the card library opened up. We want to do some deck updates. So the first one we're going to kick off with is Anders tonight. So when you're seeing this, this will be the first one. Try to get a few of these out because we do have some deck changes. And what I want to do just up front, a lot of these changes are actually going to be coming off of the spreadsheet that we did for the Banish and the UNSC guides for the units and the comparisons that we ended up doing. If you haven't checked those, we got 2 videos up covering each side. So if you have like a leader preference or a side preference, you can go check those out. But we've got a great spreadsheet up that's been kind of getting some refinement. We're going to continue to keep refining it. But some of the data that we pulled off of that and some of our playtesting with a lot of these units is kind of causing us to make some changes in some of these decks. So we're not going to cover every single card. I'm just going to hit a couple of the key highlights for what we removed and then show you what the new deck is. If you want to hear a more in-depth version of what we've been talking about with all of the deck guides, you can go check out actually our Blitz deck guides. We have a folder on the channel for those. And you'll be able to find it under there. A lot of the same principles. We went in depth each card in those. We're not going to do that here. So if you want to get a little bit more in depth, you can go ahead and check those out. But we'll jump right into this. I'll get to the current deck as we have it sitting. And the biggest removes from our original deck build that we're going to talk about today, and then I'll let Sloth kind of cover what we ended up throwing is, we removed the reactive Cyclops, we got rid of the Warthog, and probably the biggest remove that we thought was really good during the beta, which turns out to not be so good, is the Protector Sentinel. That's probably the biggest highlight for coming out of this deck. But Sloth, I'll hand it over to you if you want to just kind of run us through some of the keys for your deck here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like Doc was saying. All of these changes are either coming from things that changed from the beta, from when we initially did that, or from that spreadsheet. And the first one for me was the Aggressor Sentinel. We took out the Protector and put in the Aggressor because in our testing against both infantry, vehicle, and air, the Protector Sentinel, to be honest, was a waste of energy compared to the Aggressor. The Aggressor was stronger, had just slightly less health, and was less than half the points. So if I can, I'm going to spam some Aggressor Sentinels instead of spending too much money on a bigger unit, a bigger target that's not as effective. It didn't make dollars and cents for us when it came down to energy. So we put the Aggressor Sentinel in there. Anders was really nice for her ability on those Nightingale and the Restoration drones to keep the health going and stuff. We did see that the Vanguard Wolverine was fantastic, as per usual. You see that the Veteran Cyclops is in there. We've just completely taken out the reactive Cyclops. Veteran's just going to do more damage. It's going to be a little better, a little bit more in the cost of energy. If I can spit my words out there, it's a little bit more costly, but if you look at this deck as a whole, Anders is keeping the energy level pretty low. She's not a real high cost leader from this build, so we could afford to bump that up with the Veteran Cyclops. The Armored Marines are still great. Just keep in mind their squishiness, but I think the Nightingale and the Restoration drones kind of help that. If you kind of designate those to use on that guard ability, so having your Nightingale heal your guard units like the Armored Marines is a great use there. Everything else on this last line stays pretty consistent from what we've seen before. These are stuff that we have in most decks: Kodiak, Scorpions, high-end leader power, and Vulture. Those are things that we're gonna have in most decks, just because they're kind of the staple in most things. They're just gonna be good for most things. So we'll have those in there, and of course your Spartan. If you can get your heroes, always have the heroes in. They are always worth the money. There's not one hero out right now that's not worth it. So definitely use those. Looking at the deck as a whole, like I said, she's very low energy, low cost. So if you're running 2v2s or 3v3s, we think that the Professor runs really well with like an Atriox or a Forge or an Isabel. Somebody that can really consume energy on those really high high-end units, especially our Isabel deck has a really steep energy curve because we're going to be wanting to call in vultures and lockdown scorpions and things like that. So I think the Professor really complements that. I'm going to push out a bunch of these aggressor sentinels and Vanguard Wolverines and Hornets that are really low energy comparatively, and I'm going to field a big army, while my partner builds a relatively smaller army of very strong units. So then we have quality and quantity on the field at the same time, kind of working together.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points, 100%. I'll just throw in a few things. The one reason I like this deck build, and I've seen you play it, Sloth, and I've used it just a little bit, is just you do get quite a good amount of air superiority here. The nice thing to reference, Douglas does have the guard ability as well. So restoration drones, again, partnered up with Nightingale and the armored marines. If you do have a lot of these kind of lower cost, mid cost units, you got a couple of aggressor sentinels up, maybe you got some hornets up and a veteran cyclops, and you have your leader on the field with maybe a Nightingale and support. He's going to be able to soak up. Douglas is going to be able to soak up a ton of damage. I mean, an absolute ton of damage. So being able to have that little pairing there is just going to keep everything alive. The other nice thing that we're finding out is the guard units are absolutely fantastic against blast units because obviously they absorb all of that damage. So you won't get any of the bleed over from the blast. Blast is still relatively easy to run away from, but if you're kind of caught a little bit, or you're not paying 100% attention maybe to that specific fight, and they drop a fatigued unit in there trying to surprise you, having that guard ability just is a little bit extra insurance for that fight. The other thing I'll just note too, again, we talked this in the specific UNSC setup and that spreadsheet again, referencing just how extra good the Vanguard Wolverine is. We had it in the original build here. We actually, we're kind of just messing around with it, trying to figure out where it fit. But in these builds and a lot of the builds across the board for UNSC, we're opting to go straight Vanguard if we have it, just because it is that much better. So I do like this deck. I think it sets up great. The last point I'll make, I'm a big fan of Arc Defense as a leader power as well. It has a good area of effect, but the fact that it's calling in a specific unit to take down another specific unit keeps it from being one of those things where they can really kind of run away from it. As long as they're in that area when it initially is called in, those units will come in and they do a pretty good job of following to destroy. So as far as an actual overall damage leader power, I feel like it's probably near the mid to top, just as far as ease of use as well. So Sloth, anything else for this deck? We are running the Tactician Army.
Well, yeah, and that's actually what I was going to bring up. It kind of goes along with making a lot of units, having two Cyclops, two Marines, and a standard Wolverine in that starting army is fantastic. So you're already starting with a lot of units, and that's just going to give you a head start for building up that big army. And I think you made a really good point about having your Spartan have the guard ability too, and it's such a hard counter to those blast units that we're seeing a lot of right now, especially Wild Jackrabbit, because it's just so spongy. You drop it and it instantly dies, and then it instantly is starting to blow up, and you have to run. And that can be a problem for something with for a leader with a big army, because sometimes it's hard to get a lot of units moving. So what we've actually done is I had armored marines in my hand. I had Douglas down on the field, and I see the blast going off. I dropped my armored marines battle fatigued right in the blast zone, and I had Douglas use his Spartan slam to get out. So I didn't lose my Douglas. I lost my armored marines, but hey, I lost 100 energy to save my entire army and my Spartan. So things like that, use things like that to your advantage. Don't forget that the Spartans can slam. They don't just take over vehicles. They can just slam the ground and get out really quickly.
Yeah, great points. Great points. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, this is the first of a few of these updates that we're going to do. And again, we'll continue to refine these as we go, but this is what we're using right now and seeing some success with it. So if you've got any questions for us, please let us know down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you aren't already. Follow us on Twitter as well. We've got some other stuff coming now that we're kind of through the campaign, through the achievement guides, a lot of the stuff that kind of soaked up a little bit of time for us. We're going to be bringing more multiplayer. We're going to be getting into a lot more games as well. And then we're also looking at trying to see what we can do with you guys in the community. We've both been getting some messages about helping out with certain achievements, and just you guys are making yourself available to play. So we're going to kind of see what we can do for that. But just make sure you're subscribed and follow us on Twitter, and we'll be throwing out some info when all that stuff kind of rolls around. So I've been Doc. That's been Sloth. We are Average Gamer Guys. Thank you so very much for checking this one out, and we'll check you next time.